I know about the camera, Victoria. Amara found it this afternoon. I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you felt the need to spy on our household instead of simply asking me whatever it is you wanted to know? I saw how you looked at her. How you touched her. I'm not a fool, Marcus. With Amara? My sister's daughter. Imagine discovering that the person you've been sleeping next to for 7 years has been hiding an entire family from you. A family you've been taught to fear, to judge, to dismiss. Have you ever let someone else's prejudice poison your mind against an innocent person? Have you felt that sickening moment when you realize you've become exactly what you swore you'd never be? If your heart beats for second chances and redemption like this video right now, if you believe that even the most damaged relationships deserve truth, right, I stand with Victoria in the comments. Let's make sure her journey from prejudice to understanding isn't forgotten. Stay with me till the very end to see how a hidden camera meant to expose betrayal instead revealed the most shocking truth of all. Sometimes the monster we fear is the mirror we refuse to look into. There are moments in life when a single decision changes everything. For Victoria Moretti, that moment arrived on a crisp autumn morning in her sprawling Boston estate, when she finally reviewed the footage from the hidden camera she'd installed to monitor their new housekeeper. Victoria sat in her private sitting room, the tablet clutched in her trembling hands. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked away, marking each second as she watched the recording for the third time. Outside, maple leaves swirled across the manicured lawn, red and gold against the gray sky. Inside, her world was collapsing. At exactly 3:17 p.m. on the recording, Marcus Moretti, her husband of 7 years and one of Boston's most feared business figures, entered the frame. One look at his expression as he spoke to Amara, their housekeeper, and Victoria knew. The tenderness in his eyes, the gentle way he touched Amara's shoulder. These weren't the actions of an employer. They were the gestures of a man Victoria no longer recognized. I can't believe this, she whispered to the empty room, pausing the footage at the moment Marcus placed his hand on Amara's shoulder. There was such care in that gesture, such familiarity. She zoomed in on her husband's face, studying the expression she barely recognized. His features softened, the perpetual hardness around his eyes melted away. When had he last looked at her that way? Had he ever? Victoria rose from her chair and moved to the window, watching raindrops begin to streak the glass. At 34, she had everything society told her should bring happiness. Wealth, status, security. The kind of life her mother had always dreamed for her, growing up in their crumbling Connecticut estate with more family portraits than money in the bank. He hadn't meant to spy, not really. The camera had been Josephine's idea, her childhood friend turned society matron who'd casually mentioned over lunch at the Bristol Lounge last month how these people couldn't be trusted. Everyone monitors their staff these days, darling, Josephine had said, manicured fingers wrapped around a champagne flute. Especially when they look like that. The casual prejudice had made Victoria uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to object. Instead, she'd nodded along, allowing the seed of suspicion to take root. Now she wondered if Josephine had known something all along, if everyone in their circle had seen what she'd been blind to. Their marriage had been a business arrangement from the beginning. The daughter of a declining aristocratic family united with the son of a powerful criminal enterprise looking for legitimacy. Victoria had entered the union with eyes wide open, trading her family name for financial security. Love had never been part of the equation. Yet seeing this evidence of Marcus's capacity for tenderness felt like a betrayal more profound than any physical infidelity. The rain intensified, lashing against the windows of their Beacon Hill mansion, the storm outside matching the turmoil within. Victoria's reflection in the darkened glass looked haunted, her auburn hair falling from its perfect arrangement, her green eyes rimmed with exhaustion. What am I supposed to do now? She asked her reflection. Confrontation was dangerous. Marcus didn't respond well to challenges. Pretending she hadn't seen anything seemed impossible. Running felt like the only option, but where would she go? Her husband's influence extended throughout the city, perhaps the entire East Coast. Victoria set down the tablet and moved to her closet, pulling out a small suitcase. She would pack essentials, withdraw cash from her personal account and be gone before dawn. She could reach her cousin in Montreal within a day. Marcus would find her eventually. He had resources beyond imagination, but perhaps by then she would have figured out what to do next. As she folded a cashmere sweater into the suitcase, A soft knock at her bedroom door froze her in place. "Victoria? Are you awake?" Marcus's voice, unusually hesitant. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Had he somehow discovered the camera? Known she was watching? Victoria quickly shoved the suitcase under the bed and moved to the door, smoothing her silk robe with trembling hands. "Yes," she called, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "I couldn't sleep." When she opened the door, Marcus stood in the hallway looking uncharacteristically disheveled. His tie was loosened, dark hair falling across his forehead, and something in his expression made her step back involuntarily. "We need to talk," he said, entering the room without waiting for an invitation. His eyes scanned the space, lingering momentarily on the tablet she'd left on the bed. "I think it's time for honesty between us." Victoria's mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability she'd rarely witnessed. "I know about the camera, Victoria. Amara found it this afternoon." The floor seemed to shift beneath her feet. "I can explain." "Can you?" His voice wasn't angry, just tired. "Can you explain why you felt the need to spy on our household instead of simply asking me whatever it is you wanted to know?" Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I saw how you looked at her. How you touched her. I'm not a fool, Marcus." To her surprise, a small smile crossed his face. "No, you've never been that." He moved to the window, looking out at the storm. "What exactly do you think you saw?" "An affair. Or the beginning of one," Victoria said, her voice steadier than she felt. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with accusation. Marcus turned back to her, and for the first time in their marriage, Victoria saw something like genuine amusement in his eyes. "With Amara? My sister's daughter." The words took several seconds to register. "You're what?" "My niece. My sister Talia's child." The family resemblance isn't obvious unless you know to look for it. Victoria sank onto the edge of the bed, mind racing. "But your sister died. Years ago. You told me." "I told you what was necessary at the time." Marcus's expression darkened. "Talia didn't die. She went into hiding after testifying against our father. She's been living under protection in Chicago for the past 15 years. Victoria stared at him, trying to process this revelation. The Moretti family history she thought she knew, the tragic car accident that had claimed his sister's life before Victoria had even met Marcus, had been a carefully constructed lie. And Amara? Needed a safe place after some trouble in Chicago. The rival family there discovered her connection to us. He moved closer, his voice dropping. "I couldn't acknowledge her publicly without putting her at risk, but I could bring her into our home under the guise of employment. Keep her protected." Rain drummed against the windows, filling the silence as Victoria struggled to process this revelation. All those whispered conversations she'd overheard, the private meetings in his study, the unexplained absences, they took on new meaning now. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Because the fewer people who know, the safer she is." His eyes met hers directly. "And because I wasn't certain where your loyalties would lie if things became complicated." The words stung with truth. Their marriage had always been a partnership of convenience, not trust. Not love. "So there's nothing romantic between you?" Marcus actually laughed, a sound so rare in their household that it startled her. "She's 22, Victoria. My blood. What kind of man do you think I am?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. "I've never really known." Something shifted in his expression then. A softening, a decision being made. He sat beside her on the bed, maintaining a careful distance. "That's fair. I've kept parts of myself hidden from you. Seemed safer that way. For both of us." Victoria studied his profile, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. The strong jaw, the slight scar above his eyebrow from a childhood fight, the lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there when they'd married. She'd lived with this man for 7 years, shared his bed, his name, his home, but never his truth. "Why are you telling me this now? You could have confronted me about the camera, made up some explanation about Amara." "Because I'm tired," he said simply. "Tired of the walls between us. Tired of living in a house with someone who fears me." He turned to face her. "I saw your suitcase under the bed, Victoria. Were you leaving?" She considered lying, then decided against it. "Yes." He nodded, unsurprised. I wouldn't have stopped you. I've never wanted to be your jailer. Just my protector? The words came out more bitterly than she'd intended. Is that so terrible? His voice was quiet. To want to keep someone safe? It depends on the cost, Victoria replied. Safety without freedom or truth isn't protection. It's another kind of prison. Marcus was silent for a long moment, considering her words. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 4 times, marking the deepest part of the night. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its usual commanding edge. You're right, he said. I've done you a disservice by keeping you in the dark. I thought I was shielding you from the uglier aspects of my world, but perhaps I was just afraid of being truly known. The honesty in his voice disarmed her. This wasn't the calculated charm he displayed in public or the distant courtesy he usually showed her in private. This was something new, something real. What happens now? She asked. That depends on you. He stood, creating distance between them again. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. I'll ensure you have the resources to build whatever life you choose, far from Boston if that's what you want. And if I stay? Then things change between us. No more secrets. No more pretending. His eyes held hers. It won't be easy. My world is dangerous, complicated. But you'd be my true partner, not just my wife in name. Victoria considered his offer, weighing years of comfortable isolation against the unknown territory of genuine intimacy with this complex man. I need to meet her, she said finally. Properly. Not as your housekeeper but as your family. A smile, genuine, transformative, spread across Marcus's face. Of course. And I want to know everything. About your business, your family, all of it. No more protected ignorance. It will change how you see me, he warned. Not all of it is pretty. I'm not looking for pretty, Victoria replied. I'm looking for real. If you're feeling the weight of Victoria's choice right now, to step into truth rather than run from it, hit that like button. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most important beginnings. Subscribe if you want to see how this story unfolds, because the journey has only just begun. Marcus extended his hand to her. Not commanding, not presuming, but offering. Then let's start again. Hello, Victoria Moretti. I'm Marcus. It's time you truly met me. As Victoria placed her hand in his, the rain outside began to ease, the first hints of dawn breaking through the storm clouds. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in their marriage, it felt like they might face it together. Not as captor and captive, not as business partners, but as two people finally brave enough to see each other clearly. I'd like that, she said softly. They talked until the sun rose, sitting in the window seat of her bedroom as the city below began to stir. Marcus told her about growing up in the shadow of his father, Antonio Moretti, a man whose brutality was legendary even within their world. How he'd protected Talia from their father's rages, taking beatings meant for her. How she'd finally escaped by cooperating with federal authorities, testifying against their father in exchange for witness protection. I helped her disappear, Marcus admitted, watching the sunrise paint the Boston skyline in gold. My father never knew. He died believing she'd been killed by a rival family. And you let everyone believe that too, Victoria said, understanding dawning. To protect her. Yes. Even after my father died, the danger remained. There are people who would still consider her a traitor. Victoria thought about the camera hidden in Amara's quarters. The suspicion that had driven her to invade the young woman's privacy, and shame washed over her. I need to apologize to her, she said. Marcus nodded. Yes, you do. But not yet. Let me explain everything to her first. Does she know who I am? What I did? She knows you're my wife. She knows our marriage was arranged. And yes, she knows about the camera. His expression was gentle but unyielding. Amara has had to grow up fast, Victoria. She's had to learn to read people to protect herself. She's stronger than you might think. Victoria thought about the young woman she'd barely acknowledged for the past month. The quiet, dignified presence moving through their home, keeping her eyes downcast, speaking only when spoken to. She'd mistaken that reserve for subservience, never considering it might be caution or even contempt. I've been awful, haven't I? She whispered. You've been what you were raised to be, Marcus replied. The question is whether you want to be something different now. Before Victoria could answer, a soft knock sounded at the door. Marcus glanced at his watch. That would be Amara. I asked her to bring coffee at 7. Victoria's heart raced. Now, I'm not ready. There's never going to be a perfect moment for this, Victoria. He was right, of course. Victoria smoothed her hair, straightened her robe, and nodded. Marcus crossed to the door and opened it. Amara stood in the hallway, a tray with coffee and pastries in her hands. She was dressed simply in jeans and a cream-colored sweater rather than the uniform Victoria had insisted upon. Another revelation. She was beautiful, with her mother's high cheekbones and her uncle's penetrating eyes. How had Victoria never noticed the resemblance? Good morning, Uncle, Amara said, her voice carrying none of the deference she typically showed in Victoria's presence. I brought breakfast. Thank you, Amara. Please come in. Victoria and I have been talking. Amara's eyes flicked to Victoria, wariness evident in her expression. I see. She entered the room and set the tray on the small table by the window. Her movements were graceful, confident. Nothing like the careful, almost invisible presence she adopted when serving meals or cleaning. Victoria knows everything, Marcus said. About you, about Talia. Amara's posture stiffened slightly. Everything. Yes. And she has something she'd like to say to you. Victoria felt both their gazes on her, and for a moment she was transported back to her finishing school days, standing before the headmistress after being caught passing notes in class. But this was infinitely more important than any childhood transgression. I owe you an apology, Victoria began, forcing herself to meet Amara's eyes. For the camera, for how I've treated you, for everything, really. Amara's expression remained neutral. You thought I was sleeping with your husband. The bluntness of the statement made Victoria flinch. Yes. Because I'm the help. And because I'm black. Victoria wanted to deny it, to claim her suspicions had nothing to do with race. But the truth was written all over Josephine's insinuations, in the casual, these people, that had slipped so easily from her friend's lips and found such fertile ground in Victoria's mind. Yes, she admitted, the single word costing her more than any check she'd ever written. And I was wrong. Completely wrong. Something shifted in Amara's expression. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of reassessment. I've spent my whole life dealing with people's assumptions, Amara said quietly. About who I am, what I'm capable of, what I deserve. I didn't expect anything different here. I'd like the chance to prove you wrong, Victoria said. If you'll let me. Amara studied her for a long moment, then glanced at Marcus. Some unspoken communication passed between them before she turned back to Victoria. My mother always said you can tell a person's character by how they handle being wrong, Amara said. I guess we'll see what yours is. It wasn't acceptance, but it was an opening. Victoria would take it. Thank you, she said simply. Amara nodded, then turned to Marcus. The Rossi meeting is at 10. Your suit is pressed and ready. Thank you, Amara. Would you like to join us for breakfast? As family, not staff. A small smile touched Amara's lips. Maybe tomorrow, Uncle. I think you two still have a lot to talk about. She glanced at Victoria. And I have some thinking to do. After Amara left, Victoria poured coffee with hands that trembled slightly. She hates me. She doesn't trust you, Marcus corrected. There's a difference. Trust can be earned. Victoria sipped her coffee, thinking about the young woman who had just left. Her dignity, her composure, her strength. Tell me about her. About Talia. About all of it. And so he did. As morning light filled the room, Marcus told her about his sister's life in Chicago under a new identity. About Amara growing up never knowing her true family history until danger found them anyway. About the rival family's discovery and the midnight escape that had brought Amara to their door 3 months ago. She was studying pre-law at Northwestern, Marcus said with unmistakable pride. Top of her class. She wants to be a prosecutor someday. Victoria thought about the young woman she'd relegated to cleaning bathrooms and serving meals. Can she continue her studies here? That's the plan. Once things cool down in Chicago, she'll transfer to Harvard. Until then, she's safer keeping a low profile. As our maid, Victoria said, the full weight of her prejudice hitting her anew. It was the simplest cover, Marcus said. No one looks too closely at the help. You proved that yourself. The observation stung, but Victoria couldn't deny its truth. She'd seen what she expected to see, nothing more, nothing less. I want to help her, Victoria said suddenly. Not just with school. I want to really know her to make this right. Marcus studied her face. Why? Because I was wrong. Because she deserves better. Because. Victoria paused, realizing the truth as she spoke it. Because I want to be better than what I was raised to be. For the first time since she'd known him, Marcus looked at her with something like respect. That, he said quietly, is a beginning. The next few days in the Moretti household unfolded with a strange new tension. Victoria found herself hyper-aware of Amara's presence, noticing things she'd previously overlooked. The young woman's voracious reading habits, the way she spoke fluent Italian with Marcus when they thought Victoria couldn't hear, her preference for jazz playing softly when she studied late at night in the kitchen. Victoria had dismissed the household staff for the week, claiming she wanted privacy. In reality, she couldn't bear the thought of Amara continuing to serve them while she processed everything she'd learned. You don't need to do that, Amara had said when Victoria informed her of the decision over an awkward breakfast. I'm perfectly capable of maintaining my cover. I know you are, Victoria replied. But I'm not sure I can maintain mine. It was Wednesday evening when Victoria finally gathered her courage and knocked on the door to Amara's quarters, no longer thinking of it as the help's room, but as the private space of a young woman who was, by marriage at least, her niece. Come in, Amara called. Victoria entered to find her sitting cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by textbooks and a laptop. The room had been transformed from the Spartan space Victoria had glimpsed during her camera installation. Now there were photos taped to the wall. Amara with friends at college with a woman who must be Talia, their resemblance unmistakable. A Northwestern pennant hung above the bed and stacks of books lined the small desk. I'm sorry to interrupt your studying, Victoria said. Amara closed her laptop. It's fine. I needed a break anyway. Constitutional law can be a bit dry. Victoria smiled tentatively. Hey, she asked, gesturing to the chair by the desk. Amara nodded and Victoria sat, suddenly unsure how to begin the conversation she'd been rehearsing all day. I've been thinking about what you said, she finally began. About assumptions. About proving you wrong. And Amara's expression remained neutral, but her eyes were sharp, assessing. And I'd like to start by getting to know you. The real you, not the person I assumed you were. Victoria took a deep breath. But first I need to properly apologize. What I did, installing that camera, invading your privacy, it was inexcusable. And it was rooted in prejudices I didn't even realize I had. Amara was quiet for a moment, studying Victoria's face. You know what bothered me most? She finally said. It wasn't the camera. It was that you never once asked me my last name. You never asked where I was from, what I studied, what I liked to read. I was just the help to you. Invisible except when you needed something. The truth of it hit Victoria like a physical blow. You're right, she admitted. And I'm deeply sorry. My mother warned me it would be like this, Amara continued. She said the hardest part of hiding in plain sight wouldn't be the work or the pretending, it would be being unseen as a person. Your mother sounds wise. She is. She's also forgiving, which is something I'm still working on. Amara closed one of her textbooks. So, Victoria Moretti, now that you want to see me, what do you want to know? It was an opening, however small. Victoria took it gratefully. Everything, she said. But let's start with the basics. Your full name. Your favorite book. Why law school? For the first time, Amara smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. Amara Talia Moretti. Their eyes were watching God. And because someone needs to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. They talked for hours, the initial awkwardness gradually giving way to something that, if not quite comfortable, was at least honest. Victoria learned about Amara's childhood in Chicago, growing up with a mother who worked 2 jobs and still made time to attend every school event. About her scholarship to Northwestern, her dream of becoming a civil rights attorney, her love of photography and jazz. Uncle Marcus used to visit twice a year, Amara said, showing Victoria a photo of a younger Marcus at what appeared to be a high school graduation. He'd fly in for a weekend, always with some ridiculous cover story about business in the Midwest. He never missed a birthday or important event. Victoria studied the photo, noting the pride in Marcus's eyes as he stood beside Amara in her cap and gown. He loves you very much. He's the closest thing to a father I've ever had, Amara said simply. He's not the monster people think he is. I'm beginning to see that, Victoria admitted. When she finally left Amara's room well past midnight, Victoria felt both exhausted and strangely energized. She found Marcus in his study, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed documents. How did it go? He asked, looking up as she entered. Better than I deserved, Victoria said, sinking into the leather chair across from his desk. She's remarkable, Marcus. Brilliant, resilient, kind despite everything. You must be so proud of her. I am. He removed his glasses, setting them aside. And Talia deserves most of the credit. She raised an extraordinary daughter under impossible circumstances. I'd like to meet her someday. If that's possible. Marcus studied her face. It might be. Eventually. When it's safe. Victoria nodded, then asked the question that had been forming in her mind all evening. The rival family in Chicago. How much danger is Amara really in? Marcus's expression hardened. Enough that I've doubled security on this house since she arrived. Enough that I sleep with a gun in the nightstand now. Could they find her here? They could try. His voice was cold in a way that reminded Victoria of exactly who she had married. Not just the man who loved his niece, but the man whose name made hardened criminals tremble. It would be the last mistake they ever made. Victoria shivered slightly, but not from fear. There was something oddly reassuring about Marcus's capacity for violence when it was directed at protecting those he loved. What can I do to help? She asked. Surprise flickered across his face. You want to help? Of course I do. She's family. The words felt right as she said them. And I've spent too long being useless in this house, playing the perfect society wife while contributing nothing of value. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. You've never expressed interest in the family business before. I'm not talking about your illegal activities, Victoria clarified. I'm talking about protecting Amara. About being more than just decoration in her life and yours. A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. You know, Victoria, I think I'm finally meeting the woman I married. The next morning, Victoria woke early and headed to the kitchen, determined to make breakfast herself rather than waiting for Amara to serve them. She was halfway through scrambling eggs when Amara appeared in the doorway, surprise evident on her face. What are you doing? She asked. Making breakfast, Victoria replied. Badly, I'm afraid. I never learned to cook properly. Amara watched her struggle for a moment, then sighed and moved to the stove. Here, let me show you. You're using too high heat. Side by side they finished preparing the meal. Amara teaching, Victoria learning. It was a small thing, this shared task, but it felt like the beginning of something important. When Marcus joined them, he paused in the doorway, taking in the unexpected scene of his wife and niece working together. Well, he said, this is new. Victoria's learning to cook, Amara said, a hint of amusement in her voice. It's going about as well as you'd expect. Hey, Victoria protested, but she was smiling. I made perfectly edible toast. Setting the bar high, I see, Marcus commented, accepting the cup of coffee Amara handed him. The three of them sat at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room, and for the first time Victoria felt like they might actually become a family. Unconventional and complicated, but real. The moment was shattered by the sharp ring of Marcus's phone. He glanced at the screen, his expression instantly transforming from relaxed to alert. I need to take this, he said, stepping out of the kitchen. Victoria and Amara exchanged glances, the easy atmosphere evaporating. When Marcus returned minutes later, his face was grim. What is it? Amara asked, tension evident in her voice. That was my contact in Chicago, Marcus said. The Donato family is making moves. They've been asking questions about Boston connections. Victoria saw fear flash across Amara's face before she masked it with determination. They're looking for me. It appears so. Marcus's voice was calm, but Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders. We need to accelerate our timeline. Get you new documentation, possibly move you again. I'm tired of running, Amara said quietly. I'm tired of hiding who I am. I know, sweetheart. But right now we need to think strategically, Victoria interrupted, surprising both of them. If they're looking for a hidden More Eddie, then perhaps the best place to hide Amara is in plain sight. Marcus frowned. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop pretending. We acknowledge Amara as family, your long-lost niece, recently discovered and welcomed into the fold. We throw a party, introduce her to society, make her so visible that hiding her becomes unnecessary. That's insane, Marcus said. It would put a target on her back. Or it would make her untouchable, Victoria countered. No one would dare touch a publicly acknowledged Moretti, not with your reputation. And it would give her the freedom to live openly, to attend Harvard as herself. It's too dangerous, Marcus insisted. Actually, Amara said slowly, I think Victoria might be onto something. The Donatos operate through stealth and secrecy just like you do. They want to eliminate me quietly as a message. If I'm public, if hurting me would start an open war. Marcus looked between the two women, clearly torn. It's a gamble. Life is a gamble, Victoria said. But I think it's time we stopped letting fear dictate our choices. All of us. Marcus paced the length of the kitchen, his mind visibly working through scenarios. If we do this, there's no going back. For any of us. I know, Victoria said. But living in fear isn't really living, is it? Amara watched them both, her expression thoughtful. Mom would need to approve. This affects her safety too. Of course, Marcus agreed. I'll call her tonight, secure line. He turned to Victoria, studying her with new eyes. You understand what you're suggesting? Publicly aligning yourself with the Moretti family, the real family, not just the sanitized version we present at charity galas, means stepping into a world you've only glimpsed from the edges. Victoria met his gaze steadily. I've been married to you for 7 years, Marcus. I may have been willfully blind to certain aspects of your life, but I'm not naive. I know who you are. Who your family is. And you're prepared for what people will say? Your society friends? Josephine. His emphasis on the name made it clear what he thought of Victoria's social circle. Victoria thought about Josephine's casual prejudice, about the shallow relationships she'd cultivated since marrying Marcus, about the emptiness of her days filled with charity luncheons and shopping trips. Let them talk, she said with a conviction that surprised even herself. I'm tired of living for their approval. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Respect, perhaps, or the beginning of it. Then we'll need a plan. A careful one. The next week passed in a flurry of activity. Marcus spent hours on secure calls with Talia, working through contingencies and safety protocols. Victoria threw herself into planning what would appear to the outside world as a simple family gathering but was in reality a carefully orchestrated debut. The guest list needs to be perfect, Victoria explained to Amara as they sat in the study reviewing names. Enough influential people to ensure word spreads, but not so many that security becomes impossible. I still can't believe we're doing this, Amara said, nervously twisting a pen between her fingers. After years of hiding, to suddenly be visible. Victoria reached across the desk and gently stilled Amara's fidgeting hand. Are you having second thoughts? No. Yes. I don't know. Amara sighed. Part of me is terrified. But another part feels relieved. Like I can finally breathe. We can still change course if you're not comfortable. Amara shook her head. No. You were right. I'm tired of running, of pretending to be less than I am. And Mom agrees, she thinks it's time. Victoria squeezed her hand before letting go. Then we make sure this works. For all of us. As the day of the gathering approached, Victoria found herself spending more time with Marcus, working through security details and contingency plans. She saw sides of him she'd never been allowed to see before. His strategic brilliance, his attention to detail, his unwavering commitment to protecting his family. You're good at this, he commented one night as they reviewed the security team assignments. The planning, the social maneuvering. I should be. I spent my entire childhood watching my mother navigate social politics to maintain the illusion of wealth long after our money was gone. Victoria smiled wryly. I just never thought I'd use those skills for something that actually matters. Marcus studied her face in the lamplight. You're different these days. Am I? Yes. Present. More alive. Victoria considered this. I think I was sleepwalking before. Going through the motions of a life I thought I was supposed to want. She met his eyes. Thank you for waking me up. Even if it took a hidden camera and a family crisis? There was a hint of humor in his voice. Even then. Victoria hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. Do you regret marrying me? Knowing what you know now about how I've behaved, what I assumed about Amara. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. No, he finally said. I regret not trusting you sooner. Not giving us a chance to be more than a business arrangement. The honesty in his voice made something flutter in Victoria's chest, something she hadn't felt in years if ever. We could start now, she said softly. If you wanted to. His eyes darkened. I think I'd like that. The night of the gathering arrived with a crystalline October chill. The Moretti mansion glowed with warmth, security personnel discreetly positioned throughout the property. Victoria stood in her bedroom, putting the finishing touches on her appearance. A simple black dress, her grandmother's pearls, hair swept into an elegant chignon. A knock at the door revealed Marcus, handsome in a tailored suit, his eyes warming as they took her in. You look beautiful, he said. Thank you. Victoria smoothed her dress nervously. Is everything in place? Yes. Security is set. Amara is ready. He offered his arm. Shall we? They found Amara in the library pacing nervously. She wore a deep blue dress that complemented her complexion, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo. She looked poised, sophisticated, every inch a Moretti. You look stunning, Victoria said. Amara smiled tightly. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal, Marcus assured her. Just remember you have nothing to be ashamed of. You're a Moretti. You belong here. And we're with you, Victoria added. Every step of the way. The first guests began to arrive at 7, carefully selected members of Boston's elite, influential figures whose presence would ensure the night's events became common knowledge. Victoria slipped easily into her role as hostess, greeting guests with practiced charm while keeping a watchful eye on Amara. At precisely 8 o'clock, Marcus clinked his glass for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to him. Thank you all for coming tonight, he began. Many of you have been friends of our family for years, and we wanted you to be the first to share in some wonderful news. He gestured for Amara to join him. Some of you may have heard that my sister Talia passed away many years ago. That was not entirely accurate. A murmur rippled through the crowd. For reasons of safety, Talia has been living under another identity. Recently, circumstances have changed, allowing us to reconnect with her and her daughter. Marcus placed his hand on Amara's shoulder. I'm honored to introduce my niece, Amara Talia Moretti. Victoria watched the reactions ripple through the room. Surprise, curiosity, and in some cases calculation. She caught Josephine's wide-eyed stare from across the room and held it steadily until her friend looked away. Amara stepped forward, her voice clear and confident despite her earlier nerves. Thank you for welcoming me into your community. I've heard so much about Boston from my uncle, and I'm looking forward to making it my home while I complete my law degree at Harvard. The mention of Harvard was deliberate, establishing Amara's credentials, her legitimacy. Victoria saw several guests nod approvingly. As the evening progressed, Victoria kept close to Amara, smoothing introductions and steering her away from potential pitfalls. She was guiding her toward the governor's wife when Josephine intercepted them. Victoria, darling, Josephine said, air-kissing her cheek. What a surprise this evening has been. You never mentioned a niece. It was a recent discovery, Victoria replied smoothly. One we're all delighted about. Josephine turned to Amara with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And to think you've been working in Victoria's household all this time. How unusual. Victoria felt Amara tense beside her and placed a protective hand on her arm. Actually, Josephine, Amara was never our employee. That was a security measure while we confirmed her identity and ensured her safety. Of course, Josephine said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe a word. Well, blood is thicker than water, isn't it? Though in some cases it's hard to see the resemblance. The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Before Victoria could respond, Amara spoke. Actually, I take after my mother's side of the family, she said pleasantly. But I have my grandfather's eyes. Marcus says they're unmistakably Moretti. She smiled, showing teeth. He also says I inherited the family's intolerance for disrespect. Excuse us, won't you? I see the district attorney waiting to speak with us. She guided Victoria away, leaving Josephine standing alone with her champagne. That was brilliantly handled, Victoria murmured. I grew up black in America, Amara replied quietly. That wasn't my first encounter with someone like her, and it won't be my last. Victoria squeezed her arm. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I don't think you'll be receiving any more invitations to Josephine's garden parties. Nor will I, most likely. Will you miss them? Victoria thought about the superficial conversations, the undercurrent of competition, the exhausting performance of it all. Not even a little. By the time the last guest departed, the message had been clearly delivered. Amara Moretti was family, she was protected, and she was here to stay. Victoria kicked off her heels in the foyer, exhaustion finally catching up with her. We did it, she said to Marcus and Amara. For better or worse, it's done. How we wait, Marcus said. See how the Donatos respond. Do you think it worked? Amara asked, the confidence she'd displayed all evening giving way to genuine concern. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. I think we've made you too visible to touch without consequences. And I think anyone considering those consequences will think twice. What happens next? Victoria asked. Tomorrow we file the paperwork to formally enroll Amara at Harvard for the spring semester. We arrange security details, establish routines. Marcus looked between the two women. And we learn how to be a family. A real one. Later that night, as Victoria prepared for bed, she found Marcus waiting in their bedroom. Not the guest room he'd taken to sleeping in over the past year. Is this okay? He asked, gesturing to his presence in their shared space. Victoria nodded, suddenly shy despite 7 years of marriage. Yes. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Thank you for tonight. For everything you did for Amara. I did it for all of us, Victoria said honestly. For the family we could be. Marcus touched her face gently, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. I think I'm finally seeing the real Victoria Moretti. And, she whispered. And I think I could fall in love with her. If she'd let me. Victoria leaned into his touch, closing the distance between them. I think she'd like that very much. As his lips met hers, Victoria realized that the camera that had been meant to expose betrayal had instead revealed something far more valuable, the possibility of truth. And with truth, the chance for something she'd never expected to find in her carefully arranged marriage. Genuine love, built on honesty and shared purpose rather than convenience and facade. Outside, the October wind scattered leaves across the garden, and somewhere in Chicago, a woman named Talia began packing for a journey home. Inside the Moretti mansion, 3 people who had been strangers despite their ties of blood and marriage took their first steps toward becoming what they had always claimed to be, a family. 3 months after the night that changed everything, Victoria stood in the doorway of Harvard Law School's Wasserstein Hall, watching Amara chat animatedly with classmates. Snow dusted the young woman's dark coat and caught in her hair, but she seemed oblivious to the cold, engrossed in what appeared to be a heated debate about constitutional law. She's thriving, Marcus said, appearing at Victoria's side and handing her a coffee from the campus cafe. She is, Victoria agreed, accepting the cup gratefully. Professor Abernathy told me she's already making waves in his civil rights seminar. The past months had brought changes none of them could have predicted. The Donato family, faced with Amara's public position and Marcus's unmistakable message, had backed down, at least for now. Talia had visited at Christmas. A tense but ultimately healing reunion that had left Marcus lighter somehow, as though a burden he'd carried for 15 years had finally been set down. And Victoria. Victoria had discovered versions of herself she hadn't known existed. The woman who could stand firm against Josephine's cutting remarks at charity functions. The woman who found purpose in helping Amara navigate Boston's complex social landscape. The woman who was learning slowly but surely to be a true partner to Marcus rather than merely an ornament on his arm. Ready to go? Marcus asked, checking his watch. We have that meeting with the community center board at 2. Victoria nodded, waving to catch Amara's attention. The young woman excused herself from her friends and bounded over, cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Sorry, we were just debating the merits of Justice Sotomayor's dissent in the Torres case, she explained. Did you know? Save it for dinner, Marcus interrupted with affection. Your aunt and I have to get downtown and you have class in 15 minutes. Amara rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Yes, Uncle Marcus. See you at home tonight. We'll be there, Victoria promised. I'm making that pasta you like. You're cooking. Amara's eyebrows shot up in mock horror. Should I bring takeout as backup? Very funny, Victoria said dryly. My cooking has improved, thank you very much. If by improved you mean no longer sets off the smoke alarm, then sure, Marcus teased, earning him a playful swat from Victoria. As they walked back to the car, Victoria slipped her hand into Marcus's, still marveling at how natural such gestures had become. Their marriage had transformed in ways she couldn't have imagined that rainy night when she'd sat watching footage from a hidden camera, heartbreaking over what she thought she'd seen. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked, opening the car door for her. About how wrong I was, Victoria replied honestly. About Amara. About you. About what our life could be. Marcus smiled, the expression reaching his eyes in a way it rarely had before. Sometimes being wrong is the best thing that can happen to us. That evening, the three of them gathered around the kitchen island. Marcus chopping vegetables while Victoria stirred sauce and Amara set the table. The formal dining room remained unused most nights now, reserved for business meetings and the occasional social obligation. Here in the kitchen, with jazz playing softly and the scent of garlic and basil filling the air, they had found something none of them had truly experienced before: the comfortable rhythms of family life. I got a call from Mom today, Amara mentioned, reaching around Victoria for wine glasses. She's thinking about moving back east. Maybe Rhode Island. Really? Marcus looked up from his cutting board. She didn't mention that when we spoke yesterday. I think she's still getting used to the idea herself, Amara said. But she misses us. And 15 years is a long time to live in hiding. Victoria thought about Talia, her quiet strength, her sharp wit so similar to her daughter's. She'd be welcome here, you know. If she wanted to be closer. I told her that, Amara said. She's considering it. The conversation flowed easily as they finished preparing the meal and settled around the table. Victoria looked at the faces of her husband and niece, illuminated by candlelight, and felt a surge of gratitude so intense it nearly brought tears to her eyes. What? Marcus asked, noticing her expression. Nothing, Victoria said. Just happy. Later, after Amara had retreated to her room to study and Marcus had gone to take a call from his West Coast business associates, Victoria found herself alone in the sitting room where she'd first watched the camera footage. The tablet that had captured those moments sat unused on a shelf, a reminder of how easily assumptions could cloud judgment, how prejudice could blind one to truth. She thought about the woman she'd been then, isolated, suspicious, trapped in a gilded cage of her own making. She thought about Josephine and the social circle she'd once considered so important, now revealed as shallow and ultimately meaningless. She thought about Marcus and how seeing him clearly for the first time had allowed her to see herself clearly too. The sound of footsteps pulled her from her reverie. Marcus stood in the doorway, his expression soft in the lamplight. Call finished, she asked. Yes. Everything's set for the expansion. He crossed to join her on the sofa. You looked deep in thought. I was thinking about that camera, Victoria admitted. About how something I did for such terrible reasons ended up changing our lives for the better. Marcus took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Life rarely follows the paths we expect. No, Victoria agreed. Sometimes it's much better than we deserve. He leaned in to kiss her and Victoria closed her eyes, surrendering to the moment. Their relationship wasn't perfect. They still had disagreements, still navigated the complexities of his business and her evolving role within it. But it was real now, built on truth rather than convenience, on choice rather than arrangement. Outside, Boston continued its winter evening rhythms. Traffic moving along snow-dusted streets, lights glowing in windows, lives unfolding in countless variations of joy and sorrow. Inside the Moretti home, a family created through blood and choice and second chances shared the simple miracle of belonging. Victoria had installed a camera expecting to catch betrayal. Instead, she had discovered that sometimes the most shocking revelation is not finding what you feared, but finding what you never knew you needed: truth, purpose, and the courage to become the person you were meant to be all along. If this story of transformation touched your heart, Please like and share it with someone who might need a reminder that it's never too late for a second chance. Comment below with a time when your own assumptions were challenged. And subscribe to Serafina's Stories for more tales that remind us of our capacity for growth and connection. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful beginnings start with the courage to see beyond our fears.